Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Before we start, I want to just remind you to subscribe to my channel if you like it and to leave a comment or question so we can discuss matters which make some confusion. So our video today is about the association between psoriasis and dementia and especially Alzheimer's disease. The first paper I will talk about it today is this paper. It's in Scientific Reports. Published 15 April 2020, and the title is Increased Risk of Alzheimer's Disease in Patients with Psoriasis, a Nationwide Population-Based Cohort Study, and this study was done in Korea. In this paper, they are telling that the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease already unclear till now, but we know that neuroinflammation and genetics play a significant role. In comparison to psoriasis, which is also chronic inflammation, represents a strong part in its pathogenesis and also genetic background. And the interesting thing also is that a genetic overlap between risk factors in both psoriasis and Alzheimer's disease. So in this study, they found a significant increased risk of newly diagnosed Alzheimer's disease among patients with psoriasis. And this association was significantly stronger in middle-aged patients than the elderly. I mean by the elderly, those above 65 years with psoriasis. Also, they found that this risk decreased in psoriatic patients who took systemic therapy, who was severe enough to indicate systemic therapy. They have a lower instance of Alzheimer's disease. So what's weird here is that why middle-aged patients are more susceptible to have Alzheimer's disease with psoriasis than the elderly group. The authors try to explain that first by telling that as we age, our immune system become elder and less active than the younger one. So maybe the inflammation associated with psoriasis is somehow less than those of elderly group with psoriasis. The other explanation is that in elderly group of patients, usually they have other diseases resulting from chronic inflammation like diabetes, cardiovascular, or other issues from where they are receiving systemic therapy to decrease the disease or its pathogenesis inflammation. So that's why maybe this could explain the lower association with Alzheimer's disease. So as we can conclude, that's why severe psoriasis cases who needed systemic therapy have a lower instance of Alzheimer's disease. In Alzheimer's disease, there is an activation of microglial cells, which is the key inflammatory cells in the brain that release many pro-inflammatory mediators that cause neuronal damage. And also in Alzheimer's disease, interleukin-12, interleukin-23 signaling play a role in the development of amyloid-induced neurodegeneration. And the blocking of this pathway by blocking the shared B40 subunit between interleukin-12 and interleukin-23. So when we block this subunit, we will have reduced the number of amyloid beta plaques, which is an important pathology in Alzheimer's disease. On the other hand, we found that in psoriasis also interleukin-23 T helper 17 axis play a major role or important role in the development of psoriasis. And again, using anti-interleukin-12, interleukin-23 B40 monoclonal antibodies, which is called ustekinumab, a drug that targets this axis. This will result in improvement and treatment of psoriasis. Another issue is that studies in the genetic background of both diseases, a genome-wide association study, which is abbreviated by GWAS, showed that we have a genetic overlap between Alzheimer's disease and psoriasis. So in both diseases, we have overlapping inflammatory, immune, and genetic risk factors. And these shared genetic factors will result in more association of Alzheimer's disease with patients with psoriasis against the general population who don't have psoriasis. Also, another important issue is that this association with psoriasis will significantly be reduced if patients with psoriasis prescribed systemic medication, if they were indicated to systemic therapy and they took it, starting from acitretin, methotrexate, cyclosporin, or biologic agents. So they will have a less systemic inflammation, and as a result, they will have a reduction in the incidence of Alzheimer's disease among these patients. This will remind us by the pathophysiological concept of cardiovascular diseases, which is also commonly associated with psoriasis, especially the severe cases, because of the background of chronic inflammatory condition associated with two diseases. And also epidemiological studies showed that systemic anti-inflammatory drugs such as biologics and methotrexate used for severe cases of psoriasis will attenuate the risk of cardiovascular diseases in patients with severe psoriasis. Other researches also showed a significant increased risk of Parkinsonian disease in psoriasis patients. And another research in Korea showed that using acitretin will enhance gene expression of metalloproteinase ADAM10, which will result in inhibition of amyloid beta peptide production and preventing the formation of amyloid plaques in the mouse model of Alzheimer's disease. And another issue is that using tumor necrosis factor inhibitors in patients with Alzheimer's disease will give considerable beneficial effects in cognitive and behavior improvement. And we know also that tumor necrosis factor inhibitors is one of the major biologic treatment of psoriasis because they decrease inflammation in both diseases, either psoriasis or Alzheimer's disease. So we can conclude from this paper that chronic inflammatory conditions in psoriasis may have an important impact on the nervous system and thus increasing the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. This is another paper which was published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience in October 2020. The title is Association Between Psoriasis and Dementia, Current Evidence. Again, in this paper, they are telling there are three shared pathogenesis items between psoriasis and dementia. Which is genetics, immunity, and inflammation. And they, in this paper also they are talking about apolipoprotein E, which is a main cholesterol carrier related to lipoprotein metabolism and has a role in immune regulation and neural tissue repair. This ApoE was found in recent researches that it is the genes is highly expressed in some patients with psoriasis, so it presents like an independent risk factor for the occurrence of psoriasis. And also this ApoE genotype in Alzheimer's disease will affect the amyloid beta deposition to form a senile plaque and results in cerebral angiopathy. So psoriasis and Alzheimer's disease are both inflammatory and immune diseases. And again, in this paper, they are telling again about the role of interleukin 23, interleukin 17 axis, which play a significant role in psoriasis. And also in Alzheimer's disease, the expression of interleukin 12, interleukin 23 on astrocyte and microglia will lead to exacerbation of Alzheimer's disease pathology. Also, interleukin 17A expression in researches will in Alzheimer's disease will result in induction of amyloid beta plaques and indicating the importance of interleukin 23, interleukin 70 axis in Alzheimer's disease pathogenesis. And as we said before, using anti-inflammatory drugs in severe cases of psoriasis for prolonged period will result in retarding the progression of Alzheimer's disease and delay in neurodegeneration. And the use of tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitors will ameliorate the disease, the Alzheimer's disease, like psoriasis, and the stimulation of or activation of tumor necrosis factor alpha signaling will exacerbate both amyloid beta peptides and two protein pathologies in vivo, which are the whole neuropathological hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. Two proteins are microtubule associated protein, which is a main component in neurodegenerative disease. Also, etanercept, as I said, etanercept, which works as tumor necrosis factor alpha, will result in improvement of cognitive and behavioral function in patients with Alzheimer's disease. So, as a message at the end, patients with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis are at a high risk of developing both vascular and non-vascular dementia, and this association will be less in elderly group or severe cases of psoriasis where they are taking systemic therapy for inflammation, and that's why clinicians should pay attention to these comorbidities, as identification of this potential risk allows for early intervention so we can reduce more comorbidities and deaths. Thank you for listening, and again I will remind you to subscribe if you like the channel, and share me with your comments and questions. Thank you.